whatever you're doing right now, we're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. I'm here with Dominic Braganza. I think is I hope kind of how you pronounce your name, from India. So I'm really happy in many reasons because Dominic is really prolific on social media. I think every Catholic out there probably has seen him around on Facebook and Twitter. I think he's really producing a lot of really good content, which I appreciate, and I think other people really appreciate as well. And I would love to learn about the story of a traditional Catholic from a country that I know absolutely nothing about. And so Dominic's going to try to tell us a little bit about who he is, about his culture, and about his faith, which is the same Catholic faith as, of course, as we have. It's the universal Catholic faith, but obviously with, I'm sure, different traditions and different culture as we have here in Germany and in the US as well. And so I'm really excited for this. And Dominic, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm just a guy in my shorts. I know you said content and all of that. I'm just sitting in my shorts. I have a thought. I want to write it down and I pass it out because I'm an advertising person. So I have to get those things out. So that's why I do it. Yeah, it's easy for someone like me.
And so because as you say, you're a copywriter by trade. So you do that for a job. And so do you work from home right now or are you at a job?
I'm totally retired. I still do advertising work. I get from time to time. I have a company, so it's very small. I mean, the employee size is my wife and myself at present. So we at least have an entity where we can take in any business and then churn it out. But I haven't worked for at least I think about 3 years. Now I retired. I say because I really have given up. I don't want to go into advertising again. I've done it. I teach now, and I also take on projects. But advertising, the life I led is very is something I lament daily. Not just the work I did, but the lifestyle also. So I don't want to. I'm a retired copywriter.
You're a bad copywriter.
I'm a retired copywriter. I have retired.
Retired copywriter. God, at least it's bad. It's like, okay, I hope not. No, I mean, and as I said, I think so many people see your stuff all over Facebook and Twitter. And what I appreciate about what you post is that, and I haven't seen everything you've posted, obviously, but I don't get the sense that you're posting anything that is picking sides. In these faith battles, you're not posting anything that's controversial or that's political. You're really posting things that show the beauty of our Catholic faith. Things that are everlasting and things that have been and will be. And I think that's a really neat thing. And so I thank you for that because I appreciate that, and I think many people do as well. And so Dominic. And we'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk a bit about the content, why you do that. But maybe you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and about your family over there in India.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I got some I got some props of mine there, so I can bring them up in conversation. But since you brought up my family first, so that's Samantha, our eldest daughter there. That's me. That's my wife, Rebecca. Samantha is 7. William here is 2 years old, 2.5 now. And that's little Michael. Baby Michael is going to be 6 months this month. So awesome. That's 5 of us. It's because of Michael actually that we currently are more Sedevikantas than we would otherwise have been, because we baptized him privately. So we took we still haven't been wished by our parents and our relatives and friends for that because it's an utter scandal that we didn't go to the church and have him baptized, which we could have done. Heretics can also legitimately baptize your children, but we wanted to really feel the brunt of being Sedevikantas without any clergy. There have been no bishops. So Michael was announced into our family the very month after we became Sedevikantas in October 2020. So he was announced in 8th December, actually. The Feast of the Immaculate Conception was when we found out. And he was a Marian baby, lots of Marian connections with him. And then eventually his godmother, that is Colleen El Raka, who you've had on your show, I think once or twice. Through her, we got a padre. Because as soon as he was baptized, as it happens, 3 different padres from 3 different bishops approached us. One on Telegram, because I was on a group with them, and 2 others just added me on Facebook and then got around to saying, all of them said the same thing. Would you like us to take you under our wing? We've got, our bishops. And we were overwhelmed, but we didn't want to take a prejudiced decision and say, we want to go with, CMRI or, His Excellency Bishop Sanborn or Bishop Dolan. So we prayed to Saint Michael and said, please help us. We don't want to make a personal choice, and we left the matter alone. And then calling on our own said, my brother, Father Philip, would like you to get in touch with him. So that's how it happened, and we have catechism with him now. It's been about, I think, 4 months or 5 months of catechism with Father Ilraka.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, you were telling me before the show that your family goes back a long way as Nova Sordo or as Catholics. And so what's the story? So you're not a recent convert from some crazy religion, right? You're converted from the Nova Sordo.
Yeah, so the Catholics in Goa, where the native place that I'm from, which was a Portugal, it was a colony of Portugal. They've been Catholic since the early to mid 1500s. They were all pagans before that. Very few Mohammedans, so very few Muslims here. They were all pagans, and at least when I check my family records, I haven't gone far back, but I checked my great grandfather's birth certificate, and that's when they mentioned the paternal, maternal, everybody who's there, and that's when I found out that we go back about 7 or 8 generations back at the very least. I haven't gone and dug further than that. So that's our village, and that's if you can see, that's Father Agnel there. He's the Venerable Father Agnel. So I'm from his village, that's Anjana, the coast of Goa. And before that, of course, we're talking about the 1800s, but Goa has been Christian since the 1500s. And before that, we've had the southern Indian Christians who were baptized by St. Thomas, and then, even St. the Apostle Bartholomew was also here. So they've been Christians, but they were in the Nestorian heresy for a while. They were reconciled with Rome, and now they're actually back again. Now they're with modernist Rome, so that's they go 2,000 years back. So the Christian faith is old here.
And Goa, where is Goa in India in relation to the south or north, east, west?
Goa is in the west, but when you go to the north of India, it's a cultural shade card. They're fairer up north and they're darker down south. So when you go, and I've worked in the north, in the capital, when you tell them, oh, I'm from Pune, that's the city I've been living in, which is slightly north of Goa, they'll say, oh, you're a South Indian. And you're like, no, I'm not from the south, I'm from the west. But, they consider everybody else a South Indian. So Goa is close to the south, but it's more on the west coast of India.
Okay, gotcha. I guess obviously being on the west side, I would think that would have more. Is it more of a Western culture? I mean, if it's more Western India, does that have an effect on the culture, or is it not that much different?
Quite a bit, actually. When you go to the east coast of India, it's very Chinese because that's how the trade routes happened. So you still have a lot of Chinese people living in the west of India. Actually, Chinese people. I don't mean people who look Chinese. We also have those. Because India has got a wide mix of ethnicities, but there's very few Chinese on this side of India. We do have the Portuguese Jews who fled the Inquisition, and Francis, that is Saint Francis Xavier, found them out, and he called the Inquisition to Goa. We still have them here. They take various names. They hide under various, pseudonyms and whatever the word is, ethnicities. They try to say we are Hindus or we are Muslims or we are, Christians. A lot of them posing as Christians. So we have the Portuguese Jews here in Goa. And the Portuguese heritage is still there very much so. People still speak Portuguese. Like my sister speaks Portuguese because I think she married a family that speaks it. My ancestors used to speak it. They taught it in school. So we have a lot of Portuguese flavor, our curries, and so our cuisine and certain things are also related to Portuguese. We are not very concerned with it as a family. If we want to learn a language, we learn the Ave Maria or something like that in that language. Not we don't really care for Portuguese in any other way.
Interesting, and I've heard that, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that India was a more Catholic country before the British came and colonized it and conquered it practically, and then they spread a lot of their errors. Is that true? I've heard that before.
Very true, painfully true. So up here I have the Venerable Joseph Vaz up there. He's also from, they've sainted him in the Nova Sordo, but we await a day he be actually canonized as saint, a very holy man. He took the faith to Ceylon, so that's Sri Lanka, that's in the south, and he was from Goa, born and brought up here. At that time, if you look at the missives they would send to the superior general of the Jesuits, so like when Saint Francis Xavier wrote his letters, you would see they're summarizing the faith of the people in India. So he would be maybe walking past a field and he'll hear a man singing the Credo in Latin or in the local language. The children in Goa on the western coast, they call it the fishery coast of India, had better catechesis than the Europeans in the missives that they would write, in the letters they would write. An entire year would pass before they would hear a mortal sin being reported in the confessional.
Interesting. And so is that
And
something
and
that?
so the second part,
Yeah.
for the second part, the way you were saying the Brits came, so yeah, it was Jewish imperialism that sent them there as vassals. They came here and they destroyed a lot of things. I happened to read a book. I didn't read the entire book because I thought it was a Christian history book, and I was looking for St. Thomas's name and St. Francis' name, and I found none of them. And then it was written by a chaplain of the British Army, and he had a son who translated it. So I was confused. So I went and looked into it, and they report very proudly how they've converted what they call the Romanists. So they call Christians Romanists and they're heretics. And they converted so many of us, they spread so many errors, they've punished us, they've, brutalized us. Not me, obviously, but, the ancestors. And so we've kept the faith. So it's a bit of an Anglican kind of an issue here where the Anglicans, persecuted the Christians in their country. And in India, they rooted them out on, quite, quite, brutally also.
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing story, and there's so many examples of this, the issues with empire building, and you think, oh come on, it's the British, they're the, look at the Queen, and we have this kind of romantic image of the Brits because, well, especially from the U.S., we are westernized and we think of them as our buddies, kind of, for some reason. I don't know what that is, but they were really terrible. They did some amazingly terrible, evil things back in the day, and the entire idea of trying to convert people who didn't need to be converted, right? That's a really, really interesting point, and something that I think that's a, again, that when I think of India, I just think of I think of the stereotypes that we're taught of India. We think of people working as IT guys. Everyone works in IT, and everyone has a thick accent and dark skin, and everyone worships Hindu or Buddha or something. And I think it's super interesting to talk to you, where hey, come on, you're a normal guy whose family goes back forever as Catholics, and that's fascinating.
But they're surrounded by the kind of people you just mentioned. I mean, just as an aside, today we had four peacocks, 4 p.m. and a peacock, jump into our yard. So you do have certain things, exotic things you could call. But I remember when I lived in the capital of India, I would drive to work, and I would see these boys stop on their bike, and I'm like, "What's here? Why is he stopping here?" And then I would see them do this, and in the distance you would see there's a temple, and they're praying, on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning, and then they go to work. So I never thought of that as odd. I always thought, until I became a proper Catholic, I always thought, wow, they're praying, and it's nice that they have a place where they can be devout, and I don't do that. But now I understand that it's demon worship because Psalm 95 verse 5. And now we're totally reoriented. So we're in Goa right now, just for a vacation for maybe 2 or 3 months. And whenever we pass by a temple, my daughter starts making the sign of the cross because she remembers certain saints who made the sign of the cross at temples. And there were cases when the temple just collapsed, and certain other things happened. So the sign of the cross is very powerful, and we make it all the time while we drive around in Goa, because we have the wayside crosses, shrines, several chapels, many churches, whitewashed. It's beautiful to see, which is why we're in Goa, because in Pune, where we've lived all our lives, it's very difficult to practice the faith, because the Catholic faith is sacramental. You see something, and that's the faith. So in Pune, when you don't see churches and you just see temples and big pictures of gods and goddesses with their matted hair, you don't know who that is. Like, my son is 2 years old and he asks me, who's that lady? But that's a demon god, right, Shiva? And I don't tell him who that is at present. But in Goa, it's far better, because it's very Christian. In our village right now, I can count fingers the number of pagans that live here, because Saint Francis Xavier did so much work here. Saint John Beto also, a lot of work.
And so Saint Francis Xavier, because I know the name Goa, and was that one of his primary stations, or why do I know the name Goa? Or did he die in Goa, or why do the name so familiar?
He died off the coast of China, but Portugal was the bastion of the Portuguese was in Goa, in India. So the Indies were headquartered from Goa. But Saint Francis Xavier didn't spend a lot of time in Goa. He died in China, and his body, they brought it back to Goa, because this was his, the place where his bishop lived, and this was the headquarters, and this is also where he set up the school, the Jesuit, seminary, and all of that. But very interestingly, I should not miss to mention this. When he died, they wanted to rush his bones back because they knew he was a living saint. So they said, can we quickly pour lime on him and have him decompose and send him back to Goa so that he can, be venerated there. And they poured lime on him and they were waiting for him to decompose, and he is fresh as a daisy when they open him up again months later. And then they're shocked. They're like, "Oh my God, what have we done? He's uncorrupted." And so then they brought him back to Goa as he was, and there was a huge procession and all of that. A very memorable day for Goa, and his body is still not corrupted. But if you go and see, in the basilica there, Bon Jesu, that's BOM. Bon Jesu means beautiful Jesus. Bon Jesu Basilica, he's there. 3rd December is his feast, which is the day we came to Goa to venerate him and to pray before his tomb. So he's there, but he didn't spend a lot of time in Goa. He spent the majority of his time traveling towards the far south of India, almost to the tip of the peninsula, just before Ceylon.
Okay.
And that's why he learned Tamil, which is a very difficult language to learn. He learned Tamil, and he taught the Tamilians the creed and all their prayers in Tamil. Very commendable. He had the gift of tongues, not the charismatic gift of tongues, which is utter, pseudo babble, but he had the gift of tongues when he would speak, because there are so many dialects in a small little place. Every 100 miles you'll go, there are new dialects, and he was quite fried with it. I read it in Louis de Wool's book. He asks one of his colleagues, how many languages, and then this guy keeps telling him, he says, "Okay, I don't know anymore. I think I've learned enough languages." But they would hear him in the dialect that they spoke, and when they spoke in the dialect they knew, he heard them in the dialect he was familiar with. So he didn't hear them in Spanish, he heard them in Tamil, but in the dialect that he had picked up.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And India is so big, I assume, as you say, there must be probably thousands of different dialects or more, probably. Wow.
More.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing saint. And that's neat that you have someone so special like that to your country, because like America, we have the North American martyrs, and we have amazing priests and missionaries who did absolutely do their best and converted many people, but we don't quite have a Saint Francis Xavier. He is one of the more special saints, I think, and that's pretty neat to have, and that you can go and visit him and visit that city. So how far away is Goa from where you normally live?
It's about 8 or 9 hours away. If you're a bachelor, you want to make it in 7, but if you have a family, you should make it in 9.
Got it. Yeah, a couple kids usually extends the length of a trip, right? Yeah, bathroom breaks and driving a little bit slower. And so where you're originally from, you said it's hard to practice because you don't have the outward signs of faith, which I totally understand. Do you have any even mild persecution? I don't know if persecution is the right word, but are Catholics or Christians looked down on in any way, or is it just it just doesn't exist as much?
It's there, but it's very superficial. I don't know if superficial is the right word. It is very the kind of things that trigger you. So it's very news friendly, where they'll say, "Oh, they demolished the statue of Christ the King. Let's go and take up arms." So those things do happen. They happen in the novice order churches, which don't really. They don't even look nice. They don't even take care of their statues. And then when someone goes and takes a stick to a window pane, they start shouting. But no, Christians are not really persecuted the way one would imagine. There have been persecutions in India, and that is very the story of the tribals in Kandamal, the forest of Kandamal, where a very sad story. I can't go into it a lot. I read the book and I heard the story from some of the survivors. They were persecuted, and they were Christians, so they were not Protestants. They were persecuted for a very false reason, because there was a big guy who died there, and then they said, "Oh, the Christians killed him," and the people who actually killed him said, "No, the Christians didn't kill him. We assassinated him." They said nothing doing, and they killed, I think, 10,000 Christians, I think. And there was a Saint Paul conversion story there also. One of the guys who was going after people to kill them, he was converted the way they were willing to be martyred. We're talking about converts. We're talking about people who were converted in this generation, standing up for the faith in their own local language, which I can't speak, and they're defending the faith. Christians, we're not talking about Protestants, because there are a lot of Protestants who do convert with the Bible. They go about thumping it, and then the people learn the Bible like as if it's a book that's like some scholarly work, and then they can quote it, but they aren't living the faith, and so they don't end up being martyrs. But the Christians have been martyred, and so there is from time to time persecution, and I've seen it. But the persecution that makes the news is very superficial. So there's because the Christians, the Novus Ordo people have embraced the pagan rites and everything that's pagan about India in their Novus Ordo rite. We don't shake hands at the peace. We do this, Indian whatever it's called, some kind of a yoga pose, right? So they've done so many things that they're not really alien to the culture here, the Novus Ordo.
And do you have, is there, like there is in Europe and in the US, do you have a more conservative side of the Novus Ordo, or say the SSPX? I mean, is there a big footprint there of traditional, you know what I mean?
No.
Not non-Sedes, but traditionals, or is it pretty small?
No, it's small, but it's big in Goa, which is also something that I'm realizing when I'm here. That I have a few friends who come over to meet me, and then they tell me, the things that happen, with them, and they become a couple of them have become certificantists now after understanding that the position is truly Catholic based on the dogma. But to answer your first question, is there a conservative sort of, they are not traditional, but they are the charismatic renewal. So they are devout outwardly and all of that. So they are the majority, by far the majority people who are in the Novus Ordo who know about the faith. They're charismatics. Then there's a very, very tiny, I could count maybe 250 people who you could call traditionalists. They are recognized and religious Lefebvres, but they don't, know that. So they know tradition. They will daily send you, here's the saint or here's something. Sedevacantism. Oh, you have left the church. You do not want to engage in the passion of Christ. But then if you want to engage them with, an argument or something, they don't want to listen. So we had in my home in Pune, we had a priest who was properly ordained by Bishop Galareta from the SSPX. He was ordained, I think, 2004, so he's been around for quite a while. He joined the SSPX resistance under Bishop Williamson, so he's with Father Chazal. So he would come home, and we knew nothing about tradition. If I were to tell you how unschooled I was, I think you'd probably laugh and fall off your chair laughing at how unschooled I was, because I thought I went to traditional Latin mass. I thought that, and I didn't know what Novus Ordo was. And when I would read on the Novus Ordo is so distracting, I used to think, wow, good thing we don't have the Novus Ordo in India. I don't let the Americans figure that problem out. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. So when I went for confession to a padre, and I told him, Father, I would like to make an altar in my home, but if someday a traditional Latin mass father comes to my house, he shouldn't say, what have you done? The altar needs to point to the north, or it needs to be made of mango wood, or I don't know. So can you tell me the rules? And he said, I don't know the rules, but we have some Latin people coming over. Why don't you stick around? I reluctantly stuck around because I thought they were Europeans or something. But they turned out to be just normal people, recognized and reversed people who couldn't stop talking about Pachamama. And I was like, wow, I found people who know what's going on in the Vatican. But soon after that, I was like, oh gosh, these are LifeSite Catholics. These people visit LifeSite News, and that's all they want to talk about. Oh, have you heard this Archbishop did this and something? And I was like, oh gosh. So we had this padre with them, and he came home, and he would have his mass at my home, and I used to be the altar server, and I was learning all my rubrics. But very soon, because I needed to understand the Catholic faith, when I looked into it, I was disconcerted that they didn't have answers for my questions. And finally, one day I told him, I said, Father, we become sedevacantists. He didn't say anything to me. And the following time when he came home, he would come about once every 2 months. I asked him about Canon 209 and how can he claim supply jurisdiction when he acknowledges a modernist hierarchy as Catholic, naming them in the canon. And he had no answer for that. And, after that, he stopped coming home. So that's when because I prayed to St. Michael. I said, St. Michael, we've got a problem here. He's a priest. I'm a lay guy. I don't know anything. I'm going to study enough to be able to discuss with him because he will know more than me. And I was aghast when he knew nothing about what I thought they should study at Econ, but he didn't study this at Econ. I didn't know that. And he on his own decided to stop coming home. And so we didn't have the Una Cum Mass anymore. It took me 5 months to even broach the subject with him because of the reverence we have for priests, But he didn't continue the conversation. And now he's busy, spreading falsehoods about me and, saying that I'm trying to sow cockles among the wheat. It's really unfortunate. People respond to the truth. And they are saying sedevacantism makes sense. Why are we preaching against sedevacantism as padres? Why are we hearing anti-sedevacantism sermons? Why can't we hear Catholic sermons?
It's true, man. I've heard other stories too of people asking the recognize and resist priests and saying, hey, I just have some questions. Just please answer my questions. And they just can't, because for whatever reason, as you said, they are not trained to answer those questions. I mean, it's really pretty bizarre that it's like they take pretty severe position, as we both know. They pretty much say there is a pope, but we're not going to listen to him. And if you're going to do that, which we both would agree is wrong, but if you're going to do it, you certainly better know why, and you certainly better know what, and you certainly better think, hey, is there a better solution to this? Now, sedevacantism is a terrible position. Of course it is. It's miserable. It's absolutely, it's without leadership. It's without hierarchy. It's without our pope. But there is truth in it. There is an answer to every single question, I guess, except for perhaps how we're going to get another pope. But the answer to that is, well, we need God. We need God's intervention, you know, and no matter how you believe it with a thesis or whatnot, we need God's intervention in order to help us in that regards. And if you ask a Sede priest, I've never asked a Sede priest a question that they just said, I don't know. Maybe they said, you know, let me look it up. And then they would. They'd look it up to be sure if it's canon law or something. And then they get back with me. But to not know that's a big problem. As you say, we need to be able to reverence and respect our priest for everything. We shouldn't have to delve into theology, really. I mean, we should know our catechism, and the priest should be able to lead us everywhere else. And when they can't, big problems,
So I plan to reach out to them with something, with a letter, which I plan on calling a letter to confused trads, because they are of goodwill. I only want to talk to those who are of goodwill, who are genuinely asking questions, and who will only listen to a priest. I don't want them to listen to me. I want them to know that there is a Father El Draco who guides us. We have been blessed with this Padre. We can have one Catholic Mass in India where we don't name the apostates, as in Quarter Supra. His Holiness Pope Pius IX has written, do not name the false, the apostates in the canon of in the sacred mysteries. So if we can have that one Padre who's ordained, who will have one Catholic Mass, we don't need 3,000 Catholic Masses. That one Mass will give us the grace to answer all the prayers we've been praying for, on our knees. That's what I want people to understand in India, and which is why I'm going to start writing that little bit of a letter. And it's also why I write to my Indian audience on Facebook and other places, because the scriptures always say when Israel spoke with one voice, they rose as one man and they pleaded as one people. God responded, and King Solomon also, he petitioned our Lord, and he got the answer. He got his promise when he said, if in the time of their exile, whichever nation they may be exiled to, when they repent and as one people they turn to the, even if they're in the place of captivity, they turn to their home, to Jerusalem. So if we are in the Novus Ordo, we turn towards the Catholic dogmas and we say, Lord, please save us as one man, and not as recognize and resist everybody with his own little Protestant ideas, we will get an answer from God.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that your issue is so universal too. That I mean, obviously it's a bit different there because you have so few options of sedevacantist priests or none right now, as you say. But it really is a universal issue where you have these people of goodwill, these Catholics of goodwill, these Novus Ordites, and these people that they're part of the recognized and resistant, and maybe they're ignorant, as you said. You are. I mean, what are we supposed to be? We are not born as laity to be theologians, to understand, to understand these great saints, and to have read, the canon law or anything like that. We're just not meant to, and it's an extreme situation where we are in, and so it is. I mean, I don't blame people who are ignorant of it, you or anybody else. I mean, thank God that from God's grace you've seen that. Hey, some things just don't quite make sense.
But one thing that holds us back as a nation is the charismatic renewal. For the very reason you pointed out, that we must accept that we have no priests, or even if we don't go into the ordination and see if it's valid or not, we know that they've apostatized and there's something wrong, right? So when I spoke to my mother, this was about a year and a half ago, she said this to me. She said, Dominic, we teach in the charismatic renewal about NFP or whatever, because the priests are not saying these things. The bishops don't teach. And I said, that's because you have no clergy. That's the first cause. Okay, it's the first cause. There's no sacramental grace in the office. Now, whether or not you choose to agree with me, or not, you yourself say that there is a vacuum which we are filling, and I'm saying don't fill it. Pray for priests. Don't fill their office with your lay performances, which are borrowed from Protestant books, which you will, in your pride, not even submit to a Novus Ordo bishop for approval. So don't do that. Please join us on our knees as we are praying for priests. When we get one priest who will offer one mass, we are going to get the graces this beautiful country needs, and we're going to be Catholic again. Not until then.
Yeah, you're so right, and I think that anyone watching the show, and I hope there's a few, please, pray for India, pray for Dominic and his family and his friends, and because that is also the grace that we can help get the situation fixed, and maybe help get you a priest over there in India, at least occasionally, because as you say, that is the grace, that's the only way we're going to fix any of these issues is obviously, of course, through God's grace, and to have the sacraments. I mean, that's definitely the biggest step you can take, and that's something that I know it's not easy. It's not easy to get a priest, even in some places in the U.S. I mean, I've had people in Texas, which is a big state, but I got people in Texas asking me, "Hey, Kevin, can you help me find a priest in Texas?" And it's really hard. It's really hard. It's really bizarre. It's strange. It's sad, and it shows you it is a big issue. But the good thing is, if we do have people who do want the truth and are seeking the truth, God will not leave them alone. That's absolutely certain, and absolutely certain.
Their prayers will be answered. God will not give you a scorpion if you ask for an egg. When a lot of people here, this is also a universal problem. They will go for private revelation and say, oh, Emmerich said there'll be two popes, and so we have two popes, right? But then when you use a private revelation, like say, Our Lady said she would save us with the rosary, the scapula, and the devotions. Why did she not mention that the sacraments are there? Because the sacraments save. It is because, as St. Paul also prophesied, and so many popes, mystics, and saints have prophesied over the centuries, there is going to be a time, there will be a great falling away from the faith. At that time, Satan is going to set up an ape church. We are looking at that time right now, so we don't have sacraments. And I can prove that sacramentally. But if you even don't want to go there, let's look at this brown scapula and try and understand how Our Lady is going to save us with this brown scapula. If you have the sacraments, Our Lady is merciful and has come and explained to us and prepared us for a time when we won't have the access to sacraments. And that is why we wear. So if I wear my brown scapula, I understand why. So I have the full brunt of it. But if a Novus Ordo person wears it and won't accept the brunt of it, somehow I'm not really understanding the brown scapula.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good point. Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about private revelation too. That I think it's also a hard thing in our times that private revelation and all these different things that come together to make our Catholic faith and make it what it is. It's also all of it is interpreted and should be given to us through the Catholic Church, right? It's all part of the mystical body. It's all part of the body of it that needs to be directed to us, the people, rather than us going to. It's like the Bible. The Bible is taught to us by the church, by the priests, by the bishops, etc. And there's a danger in interpreting the Bible, as we well know. And it's the same, I think, with private revelation, especially if we try to interpret it. It's dangerous. It truly is, and the church tells us that. So be really careful with private revelation, because there's nothing wrong with it, and there are approved revelations, but the church is our filter. The church tells us, hey, look, this is what you take from this. We don't just go into these things. And I have so many Catholic friends, traditional friends, who dig into the end of the world and Catherine Emmerich and and they get so into it. It's like, well, we don't even know what that means. What is
I call them the tour guides of the apocalypse. The tour guides of the apocalypse. Oh, come here. Today we are on, chapter 11, verse 9.
That's so true. And it's almost like there's some sort of perverse pleasure from it that I think that traditionalists, that they have this.
Yeah.
Because we all know that the world is ugly and in a mess, and no one disagrees with that. The world is terrible, truly terrible. And so I think that there's a little bit of us that really wants the end of the world. We want God to come and to swing a sword and to do all these to bring justice to the world that we see rife with injustice. But in the end, individual. It's all about individual. I mean, if I go out and get hit by a car, boom, end of the world. Who cares? Who cares? Are there 3 days of darkness? Maybe. Should we prepare our souls for it? Yeah. Should I prepare for going and crashing my car, which is a lot more likely than the 3 days of darkness happening next week? Of course. It's easy to miss the forest for the trees, and I think that's a really good point.
But I think, when we say that the world has gone into apostasy, there is this perverse pleasure that you mentioned, which is why people go to LifeSite and the other Opus Dei funded places to get this, outrage, porn of this. But I have recently understood a phrase, a dialogue uttered in Saint Joseph of Cupertino's movie, where he's being exorcised, and the brother who has seen him levitate comes in and says, "Why are you letting them do this to you?" And he responds in such a cryptic way, which I later understood. He says, "I deserve it for my sins." And you're thinking, he's a saint, he levitates. What is he talking about? But then you reflect on his past life, that he was lazy and he took a long time to study, he was probably not sincere. And I think, and I understand in now, that it is because of my sins. So when, for instance, when my sister, who's the eldest sister of mine, and she won't listen, even though she shows interest, she won't listen beyond a point, just like my mom, about Sedevacantism and John Paul II and all of that. And when she does, she comes away like, and I'm like, okay, I didn't make any headway. I come back and tell my wife, I'm a sinner because of my sins. My sister is not listening to me. You see, because we are personally responsible also for the state of the world. And how dare we go and say that Austrian bishop has put up a sweater in front of the tabernacle, let's sign this change, not auction. No, please understand the faith, practice it. That's so. God's going to do something about it. And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, please repent.
That's so true, and it's something that I bring up almost every podcast. That this battle we're on is it seems supernatural, and it is, but it's real. There is real grace is real, and evil is real, and the battle between the angels and the devils and God and the devil is real, and we're told that, and that is a really real thing. And as you say, every sin of ours is a detriment. It does go to the bad side of this battle. That's so true, and you're so right that we focus so much more on the issues in the world and not in the issues in our home, the issues in us. that's a great point. That is the point. That is the point to be made. That you work on yourself first, and
Please,
then
oh gosh, yeah.
right. That's really true. But yeah, I mean, we're all. It's one of our failures, right? One of our failings, and probably one of our sins, is that we want to look outside of ourselves for all the problems. We don't want to accept that we are part of the issue and that our sins are part of the issue. And so we blame it on culture, the world.
There's this quote I read once, which is, "You're not stuck in traffic; you are traffic."
That's a great point. Yep. That's right. That's where we are now. And I guess that the best you can do is make the best of being that traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good. That's a good quote. No, and I think that. What can we do? I guess we do the best that we can, and I think that we do the best that we can outside of our own home and ourselves, and trying to promote and create good culture and spread the Catholic faith as best we can. Which I try my best here to spread culture, to spread good things from that priests have to say. That I try to have priests on whenever I can, and I know you do that too. You do that in your social media. That again, I really appreciate it. That it's just like, hey, look. We have an amazingly beautiful faith in religion. It's the most beautiful thing you could ever possibly imagine. And most of us just turn it off. We click it, mute. We don't want to hear it. And it's really sad, because if people saw these beautiful sides of it, I think the world, boy, how much better would the world be, right? I mean, truly. But instead, they go to LifeSite, they go to Taylor Marshall, because they like the drama. We're instinctively driven to the drama, and we like them saying, oh, Francis did, Bergoglio did this, and this, and it's like, hey, shut up! Who are you? Who are you, guys? You're some lay. You're not even a theologian. You're a lay YouTube presenter. What? How can you possibly give an opinion on the Pope?
Yeah. This is the reason why for a whole year after I became a sedevacantist, or close to a year, I didn't meet anyone. I was not keen on meeting anybody who was a sedevacantist in India, until Father Duterte said, why don't you put out a message and see? And then the other padres, Father Timothy Geckel and Father Zappa something, Carlos, yes, Father Carlos Zapeta. The three of them all said the same thing. They're not connected to each other, and yet the same thing. They said start a Facebook or a WhatsApp group, and you'll find out. And so I did that. I started this page, because it's nice to see, if there are Catholics, who want to get a padre in India. But I did it so late, because I didn't want to meet anybody that I'd met before, because I'd met these recognized and these Lefebvres in my city, And they would only talk about outrage and this and that. And I thought, oh gosh, if I meet a sedevacantist who just hates Francis and that's why he's a sedevacantist, I don't even want to get very, I don't want to get into that. And so I delayed it as much as I could until these padres asked me. And then I contacted one guy who's Michael, baby Michael's godfather. So I asked him, I said, hey, listen, please, do you know any sedevacantists who know what they're talking about? Can you please give me a few numbers? And that's how I got the numbers. And then, I know about maybe 5 or 6 people now who it's really a handful. Sometimes it's five, sometimes it's six, sometimes it's back to three or four. But I know that these are people who are asking questions and who are really searching.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, baby steps, and I mean, you don't know if what you're starting now is even going to help you. Maybe it's helping your kids. These are things that who knows. When you look at the Sede, I hate calling it Sede, but the traditional movement back, in the 1960s and 70s, it was minuscule. You had so much confusion and no one knew what was going on, and you had a few priests and bishops, they were like, hey, look, we just can't do this. We cannot say this new mass, and this is not right. But it was so small. This was everywhere. And just to imagine that, this is only a generation or two ago. And so we have to remember that it's taken 50 years or so to get us to where we are now in America, or even in Europe. In Europe, it's pretty small too. So I mean, you guys are unfortunately, maybe you're a generation behind for whatever reason. But boy, there's so much hope. And America is such a perfect example. That they were nothing, and then they were small, and now they're huge. They're probably the biggest in the world. And it just takes people like you, people standing up and saying, no, this isn't enough, because it's not the truth. And eventually, as you say, God's grace will do the rest.
Yeah, but the grace comes through the office. So you had Bishop Blaise Kurtz, who didn't sign the Vatican II documents along with Archbishop Pintonello, but he had Gomar de Pau, right? He had Father Gomar, who was with him from the 1960s, I think 64, late 64. He wrote the Traditionalist Manifesto. You had a bishop. Ezekiel 22:30 says, if you have one man in the breach, I will not destroy that city. You had that man. That man was not a layman, he was a bishop. India did not have those bishops. In 1959, they wrote to, so that was immediately after Pope Pius XII died, they wrote to the Holy Office saying, we're ready to paganize the sacraments. Can we please get the show on? And then in 1962, again, they mentioned this in the council saying, we've had these, pagan liturgies ready since the past 3 years. Can we start? And they had to wait for another 6 or 7 years before they could start. And that is why the Indian inculturation, so those 12 liturgical symbol innovations, one of them, which is this, and there are some other things that they do, happened within I think 10 days. They had to take 3 months and a vote. They did no vote. The Archbishop flew himself to Rome, presented them to Paul VI, who then signed on the dotted line, because India did not have the bishops. It's all about the bishops. This diocesan structure needs bishops, which is why the Society of the Jesuits and the Dominicans, the holy orders, are really powerful against Satan, because they don't work in the diocesan structure. But even there, we've been compromised utterly. So the Jesuits lead the apostasy in India today. Our former confessor used to, he still does it. He would sit on the floor, wear saffron robes, and do yoga, and he would have mass. I don't know what all he used to do, but he's the most revered in our city, because he's so open. It's crazy what has happened with the Novus Ordo today. Because when they turn away from Catholic doctrine, and they seek to satisfy their own desires, they will find their own teachers, and they heap themselves with these teachers to satisfy their itching ears, because they do not want the pure doctrine. You see, it's all about the doctrine. So I've got to present the doctrine. I can't convince anyone. I can't give them the love for doctrine, but I have to be ready when they're looking. But that's first cause. The first cause is the bishop. We don't have a bishop. In fact, I should mention this. Up here is His Excellency. This is my wife's grandfather's brother. He was ordained. So that's his ordination. So he was ordained in 47 when they wrote Sacramentum Ordinis. That was the year. So he is a priest. He's there, of course, now. That is when he was a bishop. So he was made a bishop on, if you can see that letter there in that corner there, he was made bishop on 2nd June 1968. So that was, I think, about 16 days before they mutilated the rite. And in 69 April, they officially switched over to something completely different. So he was a bishop. So this is like probably the last bishop India has had. We have not had bishops. And that's why we're in the soup we are in. It's not any other reason. The first cause, God gives the grace, you said. Yes, he gives the grace through the office.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. That's it shows you how well the devil did. I mean, he did a great job
Yeah,
in destroying this stuff and in making, as you say, making people want it, making people want this modern
yeah,
change. I mean, I was born into it. I was born traditional Catholic, so I just see it. I just don't understand it. I mean, the ugliness of it. I mean, it's just even aesthetically, it's not. It's ugly. I mean, and you see the modern churches, you see the modern mass. It is ugly. There's no beauty behind it, and they wonder why they lose millions of people every year, and people stop going to church because there's no beauty. God is beauty. God is truth, and when you don't have the beauty, I think you just instinctively know, hey,
yeah,
something's not right. And as you said, with the charismatic, I mean, they're trying to fill it. They're trying to say, okay, it's not enough, so let's try to fix it. And I get it. I understand that feeling, of course. But yeah, okay, let's go. We got to go, as you say, go to the roots. You got to go and say, okay, no, we got to fix this with the sacraments. Got to fix it with the priests, and eventually the bishops. And I mean, maybe slow, but hopefully, it's one step at a time.
yeah. I remember reading a prophecy to that effect, which says, there'll come a time when there will be a lot of delusion with the clergy, and when they snap out of it, they will line up to get back into the true church. So I pray a lot. Like I've told my parish priest, my former parish priest when I was younger, he was also the one who was our confirmation priest that year. So I've laid the entire case out before him. He's the only one who's traditional friendly, you could call, in my city, and they've shoved them off to the prison ministry. So I know, and he told me that there are a lot of priests who are waiting to say the Latin Mass. He doesn't know what it is about. He thinks it's about Latin. A lot of people think it's about Latin. But at least I'm glad that there is a way for us to get priests again, because there are multitudes of Novus Ordo priests in India. When that day comes, I know. We're praying now for Father Draka to come, but I know that Father could come, or somebody else could come, or there could be, maybe even one of the bishops could come, and we'll get our confirmations, our conditional confirmations, and someday our children will, get, their Holy Communion and their confirmations, and we get an ordained priest to be a resident, because the popes have always written very sternly that the missions have to locally grow the talent, right, and then move on to other mission stations while grooming the talent that's there. So I do hope this is a slow way, but the quick way would be if some of these priests start realizing that there's something wrong and they seek through ordinations. They will maybe take maybe a couple of years to get sound, and then in time a bishop in India, an Indian bishop in India. That's what I'm doing. That's the roadmap.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good plan, and I think that, yeah, who knows? I mean, I've seen here in Germany, I've seen quite a few priests. I think here in southern Germany, we have even 3 or 4 who've come over from SSPX, but that have fairly recently in the last years have just said, nah, this isn't going to work, and you just don't know. And the CMRI has Father Oswald and a few others. There's a priest, Father Pham, I think, from Vietnam. So it can happen. Absolutely, and again, something to add, all the listeners out there, add this to your prayers. Pray for the conversion of the Novus Ordo people and the priests, of course.
Yeah.
I think we're so. I can say this for myself at least. I am so inclined to turn this into a battle, turn it into a fight of I'm right and you're wrong. So yeah, yeah, and it's so wrong. I mean, it's so unchristlike. Christ, of course, would want to bring them to us, give them the truth and be strong in our beliefs and our convictions. But hey, let's pray for them, for goodness sake, and let's try to convince them that we have the truth, because we do.
And even if we don't end up getting our bishops, so even if it doesn't happen the way I've said, that's okay. But God is, I don't believe that God would say, you did very badly. I believe that when we fight for the restoration of the church in this way, which is to restore the hierarchy and to restore the offices that are vacant, I think God will definitely look at me and say, well done, good and faithful servant, because I'm not going out there and saying anything apart from that. I'm not saying, because I know there's a tendency among people, at least where I live, to say, oh, I'm going to start this traditionalist village. I have a priest and I just need to, get some land. I mean, what? That's a natural solution. We're talking about supernatural problems here. You're not going to get a village and, turn it around. The SSPX tried that. We've read the newsletters and we've seen what happens. None of this is about that. This is about letting God do what He has to do. We are praying, and when we have to act, we're going to act to get priests.
Yeah, right. No, it's good. No, yep. I think that's good. be practical, but not too practical, I guess. And yeah, pray. And again, there aren't enough people in India to pray for this. So everyone say your rosaries for the issues in India and around the world. But it's amazing. You see, like Australia too. I mean, Australia is a humongous place. And as far as I know right now, they've got like one priest. And Father Eldracker, I don't know if he's even still there. I think he is. I don't know. But he was. I know he was in Australia. But I mean, yeah. I've heard of the stories of what he has to do to get to the faithful in Australia, and it's unbelievable. And he's young, thank goodness. But I mean, you can't even imagine what he's having to do because he's like the only priest in this entire country. It's heartbreaking, and it's something that absolutely. I hope we need more priests. Boy, that's the first issue.
Yeah.
Pray for priests and pray for our solutions here in these countries that are huge, and then I'm sure have people that would come if you had the sacraments and the true priests. So, boy, a lot to pray for. Well, Dominic, do you have any last words? It's been really great having you on. I think we've had some really good conversations. I think anyone can find you on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle again?
Fiat. It's Fight the Fall.
Okay.
FIGHT, the Fall.
Fight the Fall on Twitter, and on Facebook, I think you have a page as well.
No, I'm just Dominic Xavier. I have a few pages, yes. Okay. But you can just find me. Please add me as a friend. I put out information daily. I think at least on the Saints and Mother Mary. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Dominic Xavier Braganza. Yeah, and again, you put out a lot of great content and content. At least that, as I said, that I've seen, it just doesn't, because there's so many of these Catholic Facebook pages that the most of it is good, and then you get into this. Oh, did you hear what this bishop said? And it's just like, oh, come on, man. You're not helping anything here. So I appreciate that, and I think anyone who follows you on either site would benefit from it, and I know I have. And so yeah, again, Dominic, it's been really nice to have you on, and I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Sure. So I do have last words. Like you asked me if I have any last words. This is something I hoped to say. It's so simple, but I should say it. God gives the grace, so we have to take a small step before we can unlock further graces, which God is willing and ready to give us. But the grace to take that first small step is already with us. So the willingness to hear a message, or the willingness to stay up 10 minutes beyond your bedtime and say, 1 second, let me read this encyclical. It's about family. What does it say, right? Because you will stay up maybe 10 minutes to text or play a game on your phone. So you have the grace for those things. You definitely have the grace to take that small step, and you will, by all means, if you have the faith, you'll be rewarded by God to take those larger steps that we all must take as Catholics today.
Awesome. Perfect way to end it. Thanks, Dominic. I appreciate it, and I'll see you around on social media, and hopefully again for another show. We'll bring up some other topics, and I'll have you on again.
That'll be lovely, Kevin. Thank you so much.
All right. Until then, God bless.
Yeah. You too. See you.